What's up, Denver? Chris Lopez here. And on today's episode, I have an investor and an agent who drove down from Fort Collins, is in our Denver studio today, to talk about how he's built an incredible portfolio up in Fort Collins. We're going to dissect how he started at a young age, learned from some mentors, some very successful mentors, and made some smart moves, some not so smart moves along the way, and give him some really good tidbits on here. So Patrick Soukup, very, very grateful that you're in the studio. Thank you, man.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It was, I'm lucky that there's some cool people just an hour away from me from Fort Collins.
Yeah, you're very nice to say that. Thank you. So, we don't talk about Fort Collins much in this podcast. So we'll reference it a little bit because you got some really cool connections to downtown Fort Collins and some insight into real estate on there. But the biggest thing is your real estate investing story. I think it's a great story to highlight the power of being patient and also the power of being a little bit boring when it comes to real estate. I don't mean in a bad way, but that's how majority of people get wealthy in real estate, is being boring and being patient a lot of times, for lack of better words, and just kind of talking about your journey, because it's such a powerful story that other investors can hopefully mirror and also get some inspiration from. So where do we start? Because I know you I think there's an early connection here that kind of got you started.
Yeah. I was an athlete going through high school.
What sports?
Track and field was the one that I was good at. I loved basketball, just wasn't nearly as good at basketball as I was at track and field. So was an athlete in college, had a kind of a career-ending injury to my knee, and there was no way I was coming back from it. And a buddy of mine who was on the CSU football team also kind of had a career-ending injury to his neck. Ooh. And his dad actually played in the NFL, was a very successful individual in Fort Collins, and took us out to Red Robin and sat us down and said, "Hey, you guys are sophomores in college. I know you guys' careers in sports are over, but that doesn't mean your life's over. Let's kind of convert that competitive ability of yours into business." And I always knew that I was going to be in business. My dad ran a company. He had 250 employees. I worked for him since I was 13 years old. And so I kind of always assumed that I was going to be in business of some sort or another, but didn't know when I was going to be starting. And so I was like, sure, what does that mean? And he goes, well, I've got a couple ideas. Let's run a large acreage field mowing business, but also let's buy a property, fix it up, and sell it. And so this was in 2009. So we bought a house in Fort Collins, which is crazy to say now, but we bought a house for $125,000 at the courthouse doorstep, basically. We and myself and two brothers, not my brothers, two brothers, his son and another son of his, worked on the property, kind of just manual labor, but we owned the property. His dad was gracious enough to essentially, this was a gift. And I still see this individual at the gym today. And I thank him for just introducing me to the business, because I think that's what it really was more than anything, was an introduction.
Yeah.
We fixed it up, sold it, made $18,000, $6,000 each. But really what it gave me was like, take something that needs to have some value added, work on it, sell it, make some money. Sounds easy, right? But really it removed some of the fear, the risk. And I kind of got, the bug. And through that time, throughout college, our partnership kind of went away, just different things. We're still friends to this day, but our partnership kind of went away. But my dad, I still worked for my dad, and he was, pretty heavy into drinking, and the economy wasn't doing great. So he shut down his business in 2008. And that's probably where I was also like working with these guys in 2009. But I called my uncle, big believer in mentors. I remember calling him from my house my junior year in college and just said, "Hey, I'm a big believer in mentors. Would you mentor me?" And I'm 20 years old, I think at this time, maybe 21. And he goes, "Sure, but I'm not really in Fort Collins all that often. If you want me to mentor you, the best thing that you could do is come work for me." And I was like, "Great. What do you do?" I didn't even know. I just knew he was successful. And he said, "Well, I'm an investor here in Fort Collins. I have a property management company. You can come work for me as a leasing agent here in Fort Collins." I was like, done. So I went and started working for him in 2010 as a leasing agent. And little did I know, this dude was like a heavy hitter in Fort Collins. He started investing in the late 80s, early 90s during the savings and loan crisis. He was a property manager, probably one of the biggest property managers in Northern Colorado. And at that time, the savings loan crisis happened. And banks started having assets on their books, and they had to offload these assets. So they went to the conservator, which was him at that time because he was a property manager, and was like pleading that he bought the property. We'll give you the property, pennies on the dollar. You know, you think about that now and you're like, man, I wish I would have the ability, you know. But at that time, you never knew if the economy was going to get better, get worse. And so there's massive risk at that time, which to his credit, you know, he took that risk, bought a lot of multifamily properties at that time, as well as what you guys would know as Old Town Square in Fort Collins. So if you've been to Fort Collins, you've walked through the square where there's the fountain, the concert. Mm-hmm. Those buildings were developed in the mid 80s, and that developer went through foreclosure. My uncle was the conservator of that property, bought it with a group of individuals, which he then subsequently bought out, you know, a few years later. But those properties were negative cash flow of $60,000 a month until he could get some big tenants in there. And again, the risk that he took at that time, which now you look back on and you're like, holy cow. Like,
it's a no-brainer. Look back now. But at the time, it's like
terrifying.
Scary. And everyone's like, you're making the dumbest decision in the
100%.
world.
I believe there's a story of his marriage at that time, but very happily married now. Great guy. But that being said, I was working for him and overseeing these properties on the leasing side of things, working in downtown Fort Collins, which is super fun and enjoyable. Fort Collins is a small community, 180,000 people. But if there's an energy center, that's where it is. Mm-hmm. So working downtown as a young kid, definitely fun. You know, had my fair share of parties and things of that nature. But after graduation, started working for him full time and bought my first personal house in 2012, kind of a live-in flip type deal. And then from there, just continually started buying properties slowly. But he's a buy and hold guy, and that's kind of what I am as a buy and hold investor.
So I want to ask you said you were a big believer in mentors, and I'm a big believer in mentors as well. As a side note, like what got you on the train to finding mentors?
That's a good question. I think, podcasts and YouTube at this time, this was 2010. So there was a lot of people were all about, reading books and things of that nature. And I think mentors were kind of pushed at that time, if I remember right. Like it's a good thing to get a mentor. And I think that's what I also saw in my friend's dad when he sat us down at Red Robin, was kind of a mentor, take us through things and show me that things aren't so scary. And, if you have questions, ask somebody with 30 years experience that can help you avoid costly mistakes. And I knew my uncle was successful and just went on a whim and just asked him if he'd mentor me. And like looking back on it, just so grateful that he said yes. Cause he's a super busy guy. I'm a young, kind of little shithead type deal as far as a 21-year-old.
Because you're still in college, right?
Yeah. And, but I was a basketball player. He was a basketball player. So I think he saw some kind of connectivity, and he's always been a great guy. So I just asked. And sometimes you just got to do that. You got to just, take the chance and ask.
Oh, you always got to take the chance and ask. What's the worst to say? No?
Yeah.
What do you do? That's where you were before.
Yeah, seriously. Then I just make him feel bad at Christmas when I saw him,
Yeah.
Just what the heck?
Yeah, guilt him into it, right?
Seriously. So super grateful. But I worked for him for a decade.
Okay, and were doing leasing agent the whole time, or did you kind of work your way up the PM company?
Yeah, I worked my way up. 2013 is when I officially started with him, full time, I should say, as a maintenance supervisor. I got my real estate license at that time as well, because I knew I was going to buy property. My dad was an early partner of mine. He has been sober now for, I think, 8 years, but he was still drinking at that time, but, smart businessman.
Yeah.
And I was young in my career, but learning how to operate properties. And, as far as when I mean I operate properties, like getting the filters changed, the sprinklers blown out. If there's a maintenance, having the vendors of electricians, plumbers, HVAC connections to where, today when I work with clients, one of their biggest concerns, if they have a renovation project, who do we use? Because there's so many tradesmen that just are booked out forever. And that's one of my skill sets. I have a Rolodex of people that I've worked with for a decade that I can trust and know that they're going to do a good job. And so my dad came to me and said, now that you know how to operate properties, let's invest together. You manage them. I'll be the capital. You need to bring some capital yourself, but you manage them, and let's do this. So we bought our first fourplex in 2013. And in that year, in 2013, we bought 10 units. and I was managing them. I was a minority partner. My wife and I, we were 20% owners, but he gave us 13% equity for management at a lesser rate, which, you're young, you're dumb at that point, and you're like, you got all the time in the world, no kids. So I was like, sure, absolutely. An extra 13% to manage it for, I think instead of 10%, managing it for like 4% or whatever it was. So still getting paid, just not, what you would on an open market per se. And from that time in 2013, we, as a partnership, minority partner, didn't buy any more partners or properties, but we went to 50-50 partners. And also at that time, my wife and I started to buy a property, live in it for a year or two, and then bought another property and started to acquire properties that way, just a few, but it would get owner occupied financing, put less than 20% down.
Oh, it's amazing.
Huge. And those properties now are still, in my portfolio. We have a property that we bought in 2013 with a 3.25% interest rate, which at the time I was like, we're never going to see these interest rates again. So I'm never selling this property. Well, we did see them again, but that was still a solid interest rate. But we started buying properties together slowly but surely. And then my dad and I we were 50-50 partners because at this point I was making more money, could bring more capital, charge a regular or open market, rate to manage the property. And so we bought another 7 units through that partnership. And I try to buy 1 to 2 units a year. And up till this year, which is only March, been able to accomplish that goal for the last, last 10 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So looking back at this, you've been investing for a little over 10 years now. There's a lot of people now all up and down the Front Range, and they want to get into investing, or they're new to Colorado, or both. So the first question I have on there is what advice can you go back, and what wisdom can you peel back from your 10 plus years of successes and also your black eyes along the way? Totally. Going back to give a younger self advice, what would you say to yourself and other people out there wanting to get into the game? It's tough right now to start investing.
It is. And, fortunately I had kind of, whether it was being ignorant or naive to the risks that I was taking, but I just took them and bought that first personal house, added some value and sold it. And then was able to translate, convert that money into additional investments. But, I had a Kia Sportage. I was making, I don't know, significant six figures for the last 5-7 years. And during that time I had a 2009 Kia Sportage, and my wife had I think a 2012 Ford Escape. And we could have absolutely had nicer vehicles, lived in a bigger, better house, but all of the money that we were investing, we were living comfortably. Our kind of vice is going out to eat. We like to go out to eat, but we didn't take extravagant vacations or anything like that. We did take vacations. We did have fun along the way, but we were really focused on investing and taking that money that was a discretionary income and investing it wisely. My wife was actually a professional athlete, so she would get paid 1099 employee, and 50% she would put into a separate account to pay taxes, and 50% she'd use to just live life. Yeah. And at the end of the year, whatever was left over after paying taxes with that 50%, we'd go and try to find a property. We'd go and try to buy a property. So
that's nice.
It was something to where I would say, you've got to take the risk. I was a minority partner in those beginning deals, but I was willing to, grind and hustle and do the dirty work and go take a call. I knocked on a door at 9:45 at night when I was in 2014, because one of the units at our fourplex didn't pay rent, and he just kind of started ghosting me. I probably wouldn't do that today necessarily, but I was just hungry. And so I went and knocked on the door at 9:30. I was like, he can't ghost me at 9:30 at night. And it was in the middle of February. And, it was a long story short, but we actually ended up having to go through eviction and everything like that. But it worked out. But I was willing to do that. Whereas the partner, he was a big money guy and he doesn't want to do that. But if you can find a young person who's willing and to hustle and can trust, yeah, that's a great partner to have. And he has to give away, a small portion of the equity to not have to worry about anything. I was joking with my dad, actually, even this year, I'm 34, but we have another fourplex that there was a unit that hadn't been paying. She moved out, but she had rentable furniture. I guess you can rent furniture, and she had rentable furniture in her unit. And they were going to come on December 23rd at like 7:30. And I was like, I have family Christmas, but I was like, and she's like, well, no one else will be there. So I still went out to that property on December 23rd at 7:30 at night and let the people to move the furniture out in. They got it out. But I remember walking back home, or walking, not back home. I remember walking somewhere because my wife had to run and do something with the kids. I remember walking somewhere, calling my dad and said, when do I get to be the point where I don't do this shit anymore at 7:30 on December 23rd, in jest, because I have 3 kids and I'm excited, hopefully maybe they want to invest with me or be partners or whatever. If they don't, that's totally okay too.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of joking because I think I'm still at that point where I'm the hustler, the grinder. And, I'm okay with that. My net worth is in a great position, but you have to be willing to do that. Like, it's not sexy, but I would absolutely do it 100% over again.
Yeah. Well, I want to highlight here because what you went through is not uncommon, where you have someone who's more successful and the stereotype is they have more money and not enough time. Yep. And they're at the point where they don't need to grind and hustle because they got enough money to live comfortably and do what they need to do. So it creates a great opportunity where for a young gun like you, where you're hungry, you do this, you build a good relationship where you can go out there and earn equity, go out there, earn profits, but also like earn mentorship, earn business partnerships. Like, you know what? I will do all this work. I want to highlight that because there's a lot of investors out there that will do that.
Oh, huge.
Now, don't go on to Bigger Pockets and call everyone and say, hey, I'll manage your property for 10% of your equity. Probably not the best cold call script out there. Sure. But I've done that in businesses in the past. Hey, you get some of this to take care of all this stuff. And it's such a different relationship because if someone actually has some ownership or some skin in the game, they act and treat the asset, 100%. Whether it's real estate, a business, whatever it is, very differently than if they're just a paid third party or they're paid this. I'm not saying like either one's like bad or good. It's just different, but also creates different opportunities. And then your story arc is awesome. You started out there, you hustled, you grind, you got experience, you made money, you went from minority to 50-50. Now you're probably in a position to be solo. And at some point, you'll probably be the money guy. We're like, hey, I'm too busy. Here's some money. Now you go knock on that door on Christmas Eve.
Absolutely.
Right?
100%. Yeah. And it was a slow transition. And each of those wins generates more confidence. I think, there's some motivational, Instagrams or whatever, and I really enjoy hearing this. Like, confidence comes from knowing that you've succeeded, the day before at whatever you did, and waking up that day and you can do it bigger and better. Yep. Rather than just like telling yourself, I can do this. Like, you have to get out there and actually do it. And those wins over the last 10 years of, I know that I can negotiate at a kitchen table if I need to, and, able to communicate exactly my value proposition. Like, I've done it. And now I can go forward and bring on partners if I wanted to, or raise capital or find deals, however I want to do, because I've done it before. And that's where I think it's like just getting in there and doing it and being willing to not have an ego and say, I'm absolutely down to take, be a 20% equity stake. Gratefully got an extra 13%, but I'm down being a minority partner. I got a 20% ownership of a fourplex. That's great. At 23 or 24, whatever I was.
Better off than I was when I was 23. That's awesome.
Super.
So, okay. So, mentors, obviously, like you and I are both big believers in mentors for, just, I'll say growth hacks, for lack of better words, and I probably not the best word, but you find a good mentor out there and what he or she can do for you in terms of experience, connections, opportunities. They can just do like the 10X, like, oh, I got this. You're the right person. Boom, go take care of that for me.
Right.
So everyone out there, find mentors, and you never get too good. You just, it's always a ladder. You go up wrong and you find new mentors. You get a new phase of life, a new business, new investing, you find new mentors. It's a never ending process, right?
Agreed.
So do you have any mentors right now in varying aspects?
I would say I recently joined a mastermind group for the intention to find other individuals who are similar spots and above where I am at, because I felt like
paid mastermind or just like a casual mastermind?
Paid mastermind. It's like $400 a month or something like that. But, I felt like I was on an island, and I was just like, trying to figure out everything by myself, and needed, whether it's just the camaraderie or also friendships, individual business owners of who's been there, done that before, that I can lean on, ask questions, and vice versa. Like I would say, we're a pretty decent media, outlet in Fort Collins, that they're leaning on me for a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's a mutual beneficial relationship. But
is this a Fort Collins?
Fort Collins. Yeah, Fort Collins.
Okay.
And pretty, decent folks in there. A lot of the kind of movers and shakers in Northern Colorado are part of the group. Cause I think there's like 5 different groups, and there's different levels, right, of things. And so
that's more just like entrepreneurial business, not just real estate.
Yes.
Okay.
Entrepreneur. It's kind of I don't know if it's actually my first mastermind I've ever been a part of, but it's, there's no one of the same industry in each group.
Okay.
So, I'm the only real estate. Well, there's another real estate gal, but she's kind of on a different sector than I am necessarily. But absolutely trying to lean on those individuals for questions and different parts of it. But that would be like my closest to a mentor right now.
Yeah. Are you mentoring anyone right now?
I did. I was, but he went to Scotland with his girlfriend like a year and a half ago, and super excited and proud of him. But I mean, he was I think he could do some really cool things, but right now he's having fun. And that's, that was part of the mentorship too. Cause I told him, I said, in my early 20s, I was full on business, and I probably gave up some of that freedom that I don't now have with the family. I mean, there's different amazing things that I have now, but I don't have the ability to pick up and go to Scotland for 2 years.
No.
So I did say, this is going to be one of those unique opportunities in your life. You are foregoing some of the business opportunities, but it just, it's whatever you want to do. But I will say you won't have as much freedom in the future to be able to pick up and go to Scotland. So I was, I've been asked a lot, and I kind of talked with you before we went live. I go to the gym every morning, open to, folks. I would say if you're out there and you're listening to this, like if you're going to ask somebody to mentor you, or if you're going to like kind of jump on somebody's coattails, the biggest thing you have to be is consistent. Like if you're saying you're going to do something, do what you say you're going to do, because you just lose credibility so fast. And when I'm at the gym and somebody who says, "Hey, can I join you at 5 o'clock?" I'm like, "Yeah, anyone can join me." Like, absolutely. But the likelihood of them sticking with me is like slim to none. I think over the last like 5 to 10 years of doing it at 5 a.m., like 2 people are still working out at 5 o'clock, which are awesome because we're great friends now. But it took getting there, going, but everyone else drops out. Like be the, what 1% of the consistency. There's 99% of the wealth, and the 1%ers. There's also 99% of the folks that just aren't consistent. Be the 1% that's consistent.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing for a lot of people as they get a mentor or whatever is they go out there, and since it's often, unpaid or, just more relationship based, is, you don't have any skin in the game a lot of times. And if you don't do what you say you're going to do, or you're not adding value to the mentor, that relationship quickly washes away. Absolutely. So I think your advice is spot on. And I think using that 5 a.m. gym analogy is phenomenal. I work out in the morning too, so I can relate.
Yeah.
Because it shows commitment, it shows consistency. And I mean, showing up's, half the game.
100%.
All right. So right now you have gone from a minority partnership to a kind of 50-50 partnership to now where you've got the experience, the capital, the knowledge, the connections, do a lot of stuff with yourself now. So what's the future plans for Patrick? Like what's going on now?
Well, so the last year we just bought the one property in Severance. Like I said, I try to buy 1 to
like just a single family rental?
Single family rental. I try to buy 1 to 3 units a year. That could be a duplex, triplex, whatever that might be. That's my goal, is 1 to 3 units a year. This year, again, we're still just in March when we're recording this, that I'm not, but I don't have too much intentions on buying anything this year necessarily. A lot of my focus on the brokerage, building that business. We were talking kind of before, a lot of the money I'm spending right now or investing is back into the business, but also I'm considering out of state investing for the first time. I look at I'm starting to look at, different buckets of income. And right now I have a really great bucket of equity in Northern Colorado investments. We own 19 units in Fort Collins that probably has an equity position of about $3 million. And we have the business in Fort Collins that's, generating a lot of cash flow and income.
The brokerage, right?
The brokerage.
Yep.
And, but we're considering using some of our income now to invest more, not necessarily in the equity and appreciation, but potentially out of state where it's more heavy cash flow. And, which isn't as attractive on the tax side of things, but you still get your depreciation, a lot of different, but I'm like, I kind of like the idea of maybe investing my next, 10 properties, 10 units, whatever, in straight heavy, hard cash flow, but little to no equity appreciation. So I am trying to consider what I'm doing next. A great position to be in as far as sitting on a lot of capital and just trying to figure out what the best use of that is. And when I know, I'll have to let you know. But right now, we're considering a few different things.
Well, you have the great problem many Colorado investors have, which is, hey, you were smart enough to buy properties, and now you're sitting on a gold mine of equity.
Yeah.
So out-of-state investing isn't scary too much. We were chatting about this before, but
I will say I started looking at roof stock. I don't know if you've.
I know roof stock.
Yeah, I've started looking at roof stock probably 7 to 8 years ago. Like anybody, I wish I would have bought a whole crap ton of properties, 7 to 8 years ago on that. But the reason why I started investing in real estate was the physical aspect of being able to drive by the property, see the asset, control the decisions that are being made of, hey, this is a really good renter, rather than increasing our rents, 10%. Let's get 6% and keep them in there because they just have taken such great care of it. The control and management of the assets is really probably the biggest reason I love real estate investing. I think it's either 5 to 10% of my net worth is invested in the stock market. And the idea of riding that roller coaster is, makes me sick. Whereas fortunately, because I'm sure there'll be times, that are not as phenomenal in real estate, maybe, I don't know. But we've done really well. Slow, steady growth, except for, the last couple of years have been crazy. But since 2013, really great 5 to 6% appreciation of the asset, principal pay down, lots of different things. And the idea of investing out of state always kind of removed that ability to manage the asset, to see the asset, to make sure that it's taken care of, know the neighborhood, know the area. And all the reasons why people invest locally, or at least in my opinion, is because I know this is an appreciating neighborhood, very low crime, great schools, all of the, those reasons. But I do have a friend that just moved to North Carolina that I trust.
What part of Carolina?
Kind of Jacksonville area. It's kind of there's a Marine base there. There's 3 different counties that he's kind of suggested that I consider. But he and a buddy of his are going to start investing. I said, why don't you guys do a few, see how it goes for you? And at that point, maybe I'd consider it because, not super sexy like Memphis, Tennessee is where Roofstock, I think, got their kind of big start of where you could buy an $80,000 property and it's renting for $1,300 or whatever. But North Carolina would be more they always talk about the 1% rule. Yep. I think North Carolina would be closer to the 0.8 to 0.9% rule. So if you buy a property for $200,000, maybe it's renting out for $1,800, which is still a lot better than the property I bought last year in Severance, Colorado, which I bought for $420,000. That's renting out for $1,750. And I had to put 35% down to cash flow $0, because I have a debt service on it. So that's kind of the consideration, but definitely have not pulled the trigger and still, wouldn't mind putting down another 40% down on a property in Northern Colorado just to have it sit in a placement of capital in very safe, secure location. Yeah,
I have this discussion a lot, just internally with clients, with other investors. And I always have a hard time, it's so hard to replicate the local knowledge, relationships, the connections in another market.
Yeah.
So I've been too afraid to invest out of state. I'll do it through a syndication or something like that, where I'm hey, cool. There's I'm throwing a few dollars of many millions of dollars.
Sure.
And there's professional people with experience, a lot more money in the game than me.
Yeah.
So I've kind of pivoted towards that. Hey, I'll put down more local because I know the market, and I really view Springs, Denver, Fort Collins as a high performing bond.
Yeah.
Sure. The appreciation party's over for a bit. Cash flow's tough. Put down 35% or do some creative Airbnb stuff.
Yeah.
But man, put the money down, ride it again. But I think it's a very, very smart, safe place to like, hey, place money.
Yeah.
Will you get the returns you got the last 5 years? No, no way. We're not having the COVID appreciation again.
Absolutely.
But in like 5 or 8 years, like, will we be unhappy? Probably not.
Yeah.
But you know, that's
and I see a lot of these as like, you know, and we talked about it. I'm one of your kind of I think you said is property llama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's a super, super interesting deal to see where your assets are and how they're performing, because I know I've got a lot of debt equity. And open to
you do.
You know, open to the idea of kind of leveraging that. I've never been a big fan of that, but I'm all about principal pay down. But at the same time, I see all of these investments as 20 years out, because I've got kids 5, 3, and 1. I see myself working for the next 18 years. Of course, wanting the freedom to do whatever I want, but provide value, show them a good, you know, like be a mentor to them.
Absolutely.
Show them like what hard work is, what it takes to do what, you know, and not just be sitting on the couch, quote unquote, retired. So I see myself working for the next 18 years, generating income. So I don't need any of the cash flow or anything that these properties are producing. But in 18 years, or I should say 17 years now, these properties are going to be a freaking gold mine. I have no doubt about it, and putting off a crap ton of cash flow at the time where my kids go off to school and me and my wife might want to pick up and go wherever they are for a month.
And hopefully by then, 30 properties can still pay for a couple kids' college tuition, right?
Hopefully. That's to be determined.
This is awesome. So, Patrick, how can people find you? Because you're an investor, you're a broker up there, and you have a really, really cool YouTube channel about Fort Collins and all that. So how can people learn more about you and kind of follow along the fun stuff you do?
Yeah, I would say the YouTube channel is great for like if you're considering moving to like the Northern Colorado area. That's a good resource. But I would say for me individually, you'd probably the best ways is like that I'm most active on is Instagram, and there, you know, answer pretty much all direct messages. I have a small following, nothing large by any means, but put out some decent content. A lot of it's, you know, focused around Northern Colorado and Fort Collins, but also focused around investing in what I'm doing personally. And I try to be, you know, pretty real. I try to think I have no ego, and so stay humble and want to help whoever I possibly can. So that would probably be the easiest way to connect, watch, and engage.
Perfect. What's your handle on there?
Just my name, Patrick Soukup.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely put that in show notes as well. Patrick, thanks so much. Yeah. I love sitting down and getting to know you more today. I appreciate you driving down the hour back and forth. So thank you. And hopefully our listeners got a lot of great knowledge, because like your energy is great, your story is great, your knowledge is great. And I recommend investors look at what you're doing. And also we know a lot of agents listen to the podcast as well. Check out what Patrick's doing for marketing, because it is solid and it is working. So good guy learning from on investing side and the brokerage side, man. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks.